The Artist Life podcast is brought to you by Real Creative Heart. Heavy the head that reps the crown. With love, your greatness is found. So rep your crown.
I'm Karen Sabo, and we're coming live from Greensboro, North Carolina for Art is Life.
Welcome to the Art is Life podcast with your host, Russell C. Holt, where we sit down with artists from all career fields and we discuss their perspectives on their art and what it means to them in life. So sit back, have fun, and enjoy the ride. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Art is Life. I am your host, Russell C. Holt, and I am in good old sunny Greensboro, North Carolina, where I attend grad school at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro for acting, and I am joined by a fellow student as well as an actor and director who directed me in my spring show of How We Got Here, a oral history play. So this is the Greensboro, North Carolina edition of Art is Life. And my first guest with me is Karen Sabo. Thank you, Karen, for joining me.
Thank you, Russell, for asking.
Yes, it was a pleasure. It's all mine. So for those who don't know you, if you just want to give us a little background on who you are, how you became a director, actor, and how you got to Greensboro.
Yeah. I always performed as a kid. I started out dancing when I was a really little kid and loved pretending to be other people. Like a lot of kids do. I just thought I wanted to do it for a living, that somehow I could parlay that backyard kind of let's pretend thing into an actual career. And I was really lucky to have parents who were very indulging of this idea. And they took me to a lot of plays, and I got to take a lot of, after school drama enrichment classes, and they drove me all over to community theater plays and stuff like that. And I was really, really dedicated to wanting to be an actor. For my undergraduate education, which is getting to be a while ago now, because I'm a middle-aged person, I was looking at BFA programs, and I know you didn't do a BFA either, did you?
No.
Yeah, I decided not to. I just thought, I don't know, it didn't feel right, even though I knew I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah, for me, it was more so outside society frowning upon it when they really weren't frowning upon it, just more in my head thinking acting is generally not something that gets money, or they claim, outside of like the movie stars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was just, I think, subconsciously something that I didn't want to major in, just to make people happy, like my parents and stuff like that necessarily didn't care.
That's funny. So it was more pressure you were putting on yourself.
Yeah, also too, it's funny because when I was in my acting seminar class with Gully, who was another one of my acting teachers, and I did my autobiography, and I was just thinking back on like my journey, and like when I was in junior college at Erie Community College, I was in like the financial aid office or something. I just heard other students talking about, something of the lines of, I hear some people are like majoring in like acting and stuff like that. Like, that's how you're gonna get a job doing that. Where you're gonna make a living doing that type of stuff. So I don't know if that stuck with me as well. Kind of, obviously it did, because I'm talking about it right now. But just like all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But acting was definitely something I did want to do. But majoring in it probably should have. But
now you are.
Yes.
I feel like it doesn't hurt us as artists to have these other things we've studied. You did communications as an undergrad, right?
Something. It was media studies with video production concentration. So it's working now. So
right now, you're using it,
pretty
right?
much. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, these other things that we study allow us as theater artists to have more possibilities, to be able to produce our own stuff or write our own stuff or have a wider view of the world. So ultimately, I was really glad that I got a BA in liberal arts. I was really fortunate that I got to study at summer programs, 4 different summer programs that a lot of professional theaters will offer, you know, and they'll have 3, 5, 8 weeks where you go 9 to 5 every day and you do the thing. And that's where I got most of my training, and I did apprenticeships, acting apprenticeships, and it worked.
Yeah.
I got jobs. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
I think it really helped regarding the thing that you're talking about, where a lot of people who don't really know anything about the business think it doesn't work. You know, and they're like, oh, you can't make a living as an actor, even though I watched 3 hours of television last night and all of those people are paid professional actors.
Exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
There's plenty of people making a living from it, and a lot of people just don't know how the business works, you know?
Right, and that's funny you said that, because I saw an article a couple weeks ago, and it was, you know, labeling like the best to least degrees to get as a student, and of course, you know, theater and acting is at the bottom. And I find that funny because, like, yeah, as far as on average, I guess, as far as the statistics of like a theater artist or whatever making money on a regular basis, like a stable income compared to like another job. However, it's funny, but all those other professions that make all this money more than theater, I'm pretty sure if you ask most of them, the arts are in their daily life of watching TV, movies,
listening to music on their drive to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
For like photography, there's like art is always prevalent in all those other professions too.
Yeah, and you know, the longer I do this, the more I see, yes, there is such a thing as talent, but almost more important than that is drive, you know? And if someone really, really wants to make it work, very often, that's the most important ingredient in making it work. So I was really lucky, and I was a working actor, and I always liked stage work. And so I thought, if I want some stability, because I wasn't fond of auditioning, but I really liked acting, I decided to pursue being in resident companies. And so I was in 3 different resident acting companies, and the last one was at Barter Theater, and they're in Virginia, just a couple hours away, maybe 2-3 hours away from here. And that was also where I started to direct. And there was a part of me that always recognized I wasn't like a lot of other actors who were just thrilled with any role they got.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel the same way. I'd get a role and I'd be like, but the script's not well written. Or like, why are you directing it like that? And I just realized I was a big picture thinker. And so that's when I started directing, and found that it's even harder to get directing jobs than acting jobs, because most shows have just one director, and you usually need more than one actor, and there are no auditions for directors. You have to just like hustle your way into jobs.
It's kind of hard to like show what you can do compared to like acting.
Yes, and then even when I decided after having a career to go back to grad school, a lot of the grad schools wanted to see clips of my work as a director, but so much of the work that I had done at first was with the other Actors Equity actors, and I wasn't allowed to use clips of them or make recordings. And so that turned out to be a problem, was that I learned in a professional setting. But I'm really thrilled to be in this program, especially with other mature artists, you know. And you know, it's funny what you say too about people having this idea that acting is a really dumb thing to study. Eventually, at Barter Theater, I became the director of education because I really liked teaching and feel like that can also be an art.
Yes.
And I realized, even though all of my students, when I was doing that, thought they were all going to have careers, that they were going to be working actors, I could tell that like 90% of them were not. And so I realized the responsible thing for me to do would be to teach acting skills for life skills. So when you study acting, no matter what field you go into, you can listen to people better. You can
Right.
read the room better. You
Yeah.
have better communication skills. You are so good
You
at
can look someone in the eyes.
Yes, without
and not be
being
uncomfortable.
exactly.
About it.
Right? You know what to do with your arms.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
there are so many things that make our lives better if we study acting. And
Yeah.
I've started to write some essays about those things, and I call them the gifts of acting.
Mhm.
And they're all those ways in which those acting skills make our lives better in, off the stage and outside of rehearsal.
Yeah, for sure. So, so now do you consider yourself more of a teacher or a director or actor, both, all of them, or are you leaning more towards just being an educator?
Well, I'm a multi-hyphenate artist,
Yes.
as people say now. But if I have to rank stuff, I would say director is definitely first, and then teacher, and probably then actor / producer, and a couple of other things like
So why directing? And why did directing stick out for you?
Well, I'm a little ornery, which is part of the reason that when I was a kid and all these people would be like, I don't study acting. No one's really an actor. I'd think, screw you. Some people do it. I can do it too.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that ornery streak is part of what led me to directing as well. Because as an actor, I would be in all these shows and I would be thinking, are you going to direct it like that? Or why did you cast that person?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Or like, what's the concept here?
Right.
And I feel like a hypocrite if I'm criticizing something and not trying to improve it. So I thought, well, I better try this myself. And when I did, I learned I think, besides producing, it's the hardest thing in theater to do well. The lovely thing about acting is that you can't worry about the whole production. You worry about your work in the production. No matter if you have a scene partner who's not really there with you or they don't have much technique, that's okay. You do your work. But as director, you're the bottom line on everything, and that means your interpersonal communication with everyone, the big picture communication, thinking about metaphors for the story that you're telling, making sure that the dramaturgy is appropriate, that everyone is behaving appropriately for the period, the time period, making sure you understand the context of the story, why it's an important story to tell in a certain place at a certain point in time. So it really takes kind of liberal arts thinking, interdisciplinary thinking, so that you have knowledge of the context of stories.
Yeah. And so what draws you to specific stories? Like, what are you looking for when you decide to direct specific things?
Well, I use a lot of food metaphors because I'm kind of a foodie, and
As am I.
I don't know anything about sports, so I don't use a lot of sports metaphors. So, like, cotton candy's fine, but I eat it very infrequently. And when you eat cotton candy, like, it disappears immediately.
And it's like nothing.
I know.
When
you can dunk it in water and it's like poof.
Yeah.
And there are shows like that are just like mindless candy floss for your brain. And that's fine. I consume those too. But directing takes so much of oneself that those are not my favorite kind of shows to direct. So things that don't have any deeper meaning or that don't give you like a little nutrition, along with your candy floss, those are not my kind of things. But the kind of things I am interested in are projects that help audiences see things in a more complicated way rather than a simplified way. So that project that we worked on together, that was a verbatim project, and I've been interested in those for like 30 years, ever since I saw Anna DeVere Smith when I was in college. And we're in Greensboro, North Carolina. And like I think I said during rehearsal, when I was in college and I was studying the civil rights movement, I saw that iconic picture of those 4 young men on the Woolworths seats. For the Woolworth sit-in, and I was really excited to get to come to grad school in the place where that happened. And one of those places where all of these brave young people protested in order to make the world a better place and make, America for more Americans. And so that was part of why I was interested in making this verbatim play that honored the place that we're in, because it's a really important place in history. I didn't like history class till recently, but my favorite way to learn about history is through plays. So I thought, I'm going to learn from doing this project, and if I can make this history seem really interesting, alive, and relevant for the mostly undergraduate audience, then that's me using this show to help people learn more and think more without it seeming like a lesson or seeming pedantic.
Right.
So I love projects like that.
So advice to you all, you history teachers, make it interesting for students, because I too was not a fan of history growing up, but I am more now as I'm grown wiser and more mature. But in class it was like, why are we learning about it? And then plus too, with the whole school thing, that's a whole nother conversation, how they're messing up that as far as deciding what to teach, what not to teach. So are you looking to do more devised work, or do you prefer like more structural plays and storylines, or do you like the devised route?
I do really like creating plays. That was really fun to do that verbatim project, and I've done a bunch of those. I'm also a playwright, and one of my projects this spring is going to be to finish a play that I've been chewing on for a couple of years, and that actually is going to be a comedy. It's called The Christmas Jew, and it's semi-autobiographical, and it's about a woman who's an actor, and she's Jewish, and she's in her 5th production of A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And it's kind of about, I'm interested in these issues of what it means to be an American.
Right.
I'm only a second-generation American. All my grandparents were born in the old country back in Europe. But I see that because I'm white, other white people will sometimes view me as more American than friends of mine whose families have been in the country like 8 times as long as mine, And so the issue of like assimilation and how we can hang on to who we really are, but fully embrace what the country is supposed to be offering, whether that has to do with race or religion or gender or philosophical ideas. Those are things that I'm interested in. So I like directing plays that have something to do with stuff I'm already interested in, like that. And I'm also interested in this new genre of public works theater. I haven't directed many plays in community theaters, and I love the idea of it, but because I'm a trained professional actor, sometimes it can be frustrating because the actors don't always take it seriously. They're there to have fun. But this is an interesting mashup, this new genre of public works, and it comes from Lear de Bessone's work at the Public Theater in New York City, where they'll do a show with about 200 people, and like 7 to 10 will be professionals, and then they have another small group of people who maybe used to be acting professionals and they've gotten into a different field, or they're young professionals who haven't really kick-started their career yet. And then they have like 180 just other people, people from veterans groups or the domestic workers union or like an after-school education group, and they get all these people together to be in this show with the Public Theater at the Delacorte in Central Park, which is a big darn deal. And so these people feel seen and heard and included in this show at this fancy theater. And it's the kind of inclusion that I think is really good for theater and good for democracy as well. But the theater is very high quality because it's got professionals who are playing most of the leads. And so I'm looking forward to trying to direct a project like that. And I'll be teaching as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So prior to your coming here, what has changed or gotten better in your directing from when you were directing prior compared to now, what you've learned in school?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I came to directing from being an actor, my strength is as an acting coach, and I really like directing students because they want to improve their technique, and that allows me to direct and do acting coaching at the same time. So that's really, really fun for me. But because I didn't have formal training in theater, and because I didn't study it as an undergrad, I didn't know anything about design.
Okay,
I mean, I knew about costumes because I wore them,
Right.
but the only thing I knew about lighting was that I was supposed to get in the light. You know?
Right.
I mean, I didn't know anything about how any of that worked. And that's been a very significant area for me here, is learning how to see design better, how to talk to designers better, how to look at early sketches of design and have more of an idea of whether or not it's really going to be helpful to the story that we're telling. It's helping me see pitfalls early on in design for what I want to stage as a director. So that's been enormously helpful, actually.
Yeah, so when you're working with the designers and stuff like that, how much of it is a compromise or give and take when it comes to like the overall vision of what you're trying to put on?
Well, before I got here, there wasn't much give and take because I didn't really know anything about design. So like the set designer would show me something and I'd be like, it looks great. I think we need a door over there. And they'd be like, okay. And that was sort of the extent of the conversations.
Okay.
I mean, I would start with the designers by saying, this is the heart of the show. You know, this is the action that all of the characters are pursuing. This is the idea that is at the center of it. And then they would go from there. But once they got me their sketches back, I just didn't even know well enough how to read those in order to really have a conversation. But I do now, and that's really super helpful. It's one of the most significant things I've gotten from my time here.
Nice.
Yeah, and another thing I've gotten has been as an educator, and because I have this other master's degree in liberal studies, I've been teaching as an adjunct on and off in colleges for like 15 years. But I was really curious as to how people set up MFA acting and directing programs, because ultimately I can see myself teaching in one. I would really like to do so. So it's been really cool to get to sit in on some of your classes that the MFA actors are taking, and to be able to look at the progression of stuff that they're giving the directors and see how these really good artist educators who run this program have structured this program so we're all building on the stuff that we did earlier.
Right, yeah. When you're directing, like when you do a play and stuff like that, do you have like added pressure, or do you feel like pressure to like get it, quote unquote, the correct way of how the playwright envisioned or wrote it, but we don't really know what the intention, like it's all interpretation. But some of it is kind of straightforward, or at least you would think so. Do you find that difficult, or you find added pressure doing that?
You know, I feel like so much of directing is about balance. In a way, a director has to be really respectful of a script. And I think it is important for us to figure out the original intent and to do enough research to see what the original context was, and to try to figure out why it was done, why it was received the way that it was. But in a way, I feel like we also have to be irreverent. You know, if I'm working on a new play, then I live now, so I understand, I have a better understanding of why this play now. But if I'm working on an older play, sometimes it can get in the way if you're too reverent. Like I worked on Glass Menagerie, and Tennessee Williams has some really weird stage directions in that, about like it should be all floaty and gauzy and like a flute and like a memory. But the actual lines, the dialogue, aren't like that at all. They're like a family in crisis where everyone wants to kill each other. And so, you know, I thought, well, I'm not going to be reverent of these stage directions. I'm going to be reverent of the lines he's written. So we didn't do like gauzy flute music and make it like a dream. It was like a family crisis drama.
Okay.
And it worked really well. And in a way, I felt like that ability to be irreverent and seemingly disrespectful of the stage directions allowed me to actually illuminate the play in a better way for a modern audience.
Gotcha. So the stage directions per se maybe doesn't really matter as much, you know, depending on the time and with the style of the play. However, lines. What is your thoughts on lines?
Oh, well.
When it comes to certain lines, maybe not translating to a modern audience.
Well, it depends on the play. If I'm as a producer, because I have produced some theater, if I sign a contract that we're going to do a play that it still has the copyright, it always says on the contract you're going to do this exactly as written. Now, I will admit that occasionally I will change a word or two, but usually that's it. Now, if I'm working on a Shakespeare play, there are some really interesting issues with them, and yes, I make changes, and I hope Shakespeare doesn't mind.
No.
But, you know, thinking about race, in Shakespeare plays, there are a lot of linguistic issues where, like, what is good is light, and what is bad is dark, and that has a racist connotation. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that's how Shakespeare meant it, but that's how his society thought of things.
Right.
And I feel like as a responsible person who's living now and who has an awareness that, you know, we're living with a lot of people with a lot of unconscious racism, if I keep that in, I'm supporting those ideas. And so as someone who tries to be anti-racist, that's an example of something that I will absolutely change in Shakespeare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So we're coming up on less than 6 months of graduation.
Wow.
You did your master production this semester, correct?
I did,
And it was a Shakespeare musical.
Yes, it was.
As you like it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Sure.
If you want to.
Sure.
We don't.
Yeah. Well, not every musical is the right match for me to direct, especially the ones that are just cotton candy. But this was a Shakespeare musical, and I wanted to do more musicals, and I do love working on Shakespeare, so this seemed like a good mashup.
Are there a lot of Shakespeare musicals, or is this like
a lot?
Or like, are there a handful of
There
them?
are.
Oh,
there
okay.
are some Shakespeare musicals, shockingly.
Okay.
I know. I've never directed one before. I've only done, either or, Shakespeare or musicals. So that was interesting. And also, this was a Shakespeare musical that was originally done as one of those public works projects that had like 200 people in it.
Okay.
And so I was really excited to get to direct it because then I could get inside a public works script, even though we were doing it with 25 undergrads.
Right.
So yeah, it was very interesting. And I would say probably 40% of the dialogue, 45% was Shakespeare's dialogue. And then the rest was not, and the songs weren't trying to be an iambic pentameter or using Shakespearean Elizabethan language or anything like that. So it was a really interesting adaptation.
Yeah.
And I heard from a lot of people that they thought they didn't like Shakespeare, but if Shakespeare's like this, they like it.
Yeah.
And it just reiterated to me the importance of we as theater artists adapting things for our time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had, 30 minutes of the original text in this, but people liked the show, that's good enough for me. I mean, I'm up to directing a 2.5-hour Shakespeare play, but the audiences for those are relatively limited, and I think especially younger generations are less interested in them. But the language is beautiful, and the stories are great.
Yeah.
And
once you know what they're saying.
Exactly, right? And, you know, it's interesting just to be a middle-aged person and see that people's ability to understand archaic language is really different from how it was 40 years ago, because we're such a more visual society. So that was a really interesting project for me, and it was great to be able to have all of these elements I'm interested in, like theater history and the Shakespeare and the public works, and also musicals. And I used to do a ton of musicals as an actor, so that was really fun. And then also be in a position where it was all undergrad, so I was doing a lot of teaching and directing at the same time. And
I get that segues into another question as far as like teaching students versus, or directing students versus directing like adults or like professionals outside. Would that be the main difference, is like you see yourself more as a teacher when you're doing it with the students?
I do. And, you know, one of the tricky things about directing professionals is well, our professor, John Gully, has this joke that sometimes when you're directing professionals, they'll say, just tell me where you want me to stand. Right. They just want the blocking, and they want to take care of their entire performance themselves. But if you want your show as a director to be cohesive and to have a real heart to it, and have everything that happens emanate from that heart, everyone has to be on board. You know, so sometimes you have to like sneak in. It's not acting coaching, but like the direction of the acting. You know, it's got to be on the same page as the rest of the play if you want aesthetic unity. But sometimes professional actors, they're not up for it. They feel like, I know what to do. I've done my training. I have, 30 years of experience. Just tell me where to stand. And you have to be like, okay, I want you to stand over there. But when you're standing over there, make sure that you're also like pursuing this thing that everyone else is pursuing.
Got to do Jedi mind tricks with them.
Yes.
So like some actors do want to be told everything, and other actors don't, like you were saying. So it's finding that balance, and then like
and that's one of the tricky things with undergrads. I mean, here they're getting good training, so they know they're supposed to show up with choices made and stuff they're trying. But sometimes with brand new actors, like they won't even do that, so you say, okay, you're supposed to come on stage now, and they're like, well, where should I come from, and how do you want me to enter? And I'm like, you can walk, let's try that.
Use
and
your
coming
legs
from the door,
open the door.
So there is a happy medium, and usually that's students, especially in a program where they're getting good instruction like here.
So you've done musicals directing, done plays directing, Shakespeare. Are there any significant differences to the approach when it comes to directing those different styles of, specifically like musicals versus regular, like straight plays?
With musicals, there's so much collaboration because they're so sprawling. You need experts in the various fields. You need the choreographer, and you need the musical director, and then sometimes you also have the dance captain, and then you have the rehearsal pianist. And when I'm directing a straight play, it feels more purely my vision, because we don't have those other people. What everyone is doing is with my support and encouragement and direction. And when you're working on a musical, you have to communicate so well with those collaborators to make sure that the leadership that they're doing also has to do with that central idea, and that we're all telling the same story. So it's just like these different levels of empowering and communicating with musicals. And with straight plays, it's more all the same. You're communicating with stage management team and the designers,
Mm-hmm.
but then with the actors, it's more like on the same page.
Gotcha. So when it comes to watching your shows after they're done, so
Mhm.
I've heard like once the show's up, you know, the director's job's done pretty much. Yeah, so like I want to talk about how do you feel about that? Like,
Well,
is it nerve wracking? Like, do you like?
it is, and you know, it all depends on the show,
Mhm.
how I go back and watch it.
Mhm.
And in educational settings, of course, we have really short runs,
Mhm.
so usually when I go back and see it, it's not that far from when we've opened, and the show hasn't changed that much.
Mhm.
But like with As You Like It, we had 2 weekends, and I
Mhm.
went to see the very last show,
Mhm.
and I could already see a lot of growth from our opening night, and I was really proud of the cast for that.
Yeah.
You know, it was only like the 7th show,
Right.
but they had really come far. But I've directed some shows in professional settings where we've had like 60, 70, 80 performances, and depending on the show, it's a weird experience to go back.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I go back and I think, I got this all wrong.
Right, yeah.
You know, and I should have gone in this other direction. Or sometimes I'm like, yeah, this holds together pretty well. I see now that I missed that.
Mhm.
You know, so I usually see areas where it could improve.
Mhm.
And once or twice I've gone back after being away for, you know, a month, and the cast has started to do something really weird
Mhm.
that they didn't realize they weren't doing in the first place, and you have to go in and be like, okay, this one thing, let's cut that
Yeah.
out completely. Yeah,
Yeah.
Gully calls that the cast improving, making improvements.
Yeah.
And so he says when you're a director, you have to go get rid of the improvements.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Like, do you encourage your actors to continue to try new things when the show's up, or do you want them to like stay in the standards of doing the specifics and saying things a specific way if they were working before?
You know, that's such an interesting question. It's one of the most challenging aspects of directing is you have to build the road along with the cast, right? They have to know, like, don't go over there because that's not the road anymore. And like, that's the shoulder of the road. We're going to stay on the road. You don't have to stay in your lane on the road. You can veer back and forth, but don't go outside of these boundaries because that's where the wolves are. You know, they're going to eat you. But a road, the reason I like the metaphor of the road is because you don't know where it ends. You can keep going in that direction.
Yeah.
So
that's a good analogy.
Yeah, right. It's crucial to do both, and you want people to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, but you don't want them to veer off the road and like start to make a new path.
Right. And you don't want that bumper to bumper traffic either.
Exactly, right. You don't want them to like fall down on the road. So you want to make sure the road has structure and integrity, and you know, it's going in the direction and everyone's going in the direction together. So yeah, growth, allowing for growth is crucial, but growth in the right direction.
Do you, when you watch plays and film or what have you, is there a specific lens you watch them through? Do you watch them as a fan, as a director, actor, a little bit of both depending on what it is? Or
you mean when I watch other people's shows?
Yeah, when you watch your other people's as well as yours. Yeah, either one or both. Yeah. I
usually have my director lens on unless I'm really tired, and then I don't. Sometimes I have my producer lens on, like especially if I can't figure out why someone picked that show to put all that time and money toward.
Right.
So it depends on the show. Sometimes if the show is really, really well done, I just sit there and enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah, and those are the best experiences.
Yeah.
But then, of course, I get out of it and I'm like, okay, why are you enjoying it? What are they doing so well, and what can you learn from it?
Do you feel like that stops you from enjoying the show? Like, because you're constantly like looking at it and critiquing it and stuff like that?
Yeah, like even with film and TV projects, which I'm getting more and more interested in. I'm starting to do some projects like that. My husband and I just watched something on HBO Max called The Outsider, and we thought it was really well told, but we were also deconstructing it while we were enjoying it. Being like, oh, look at that shot. Look how they changed the focus on that shot. That framing was weird. Why did they pick that framing?
Yeah.
So I mean, once you start making it your life, your art is life.
Yes.
You can't really separate the two anymore.
Yeah.
So I can't just be a regular audience member anymore.
I still consider myself a regular audience member. That's why, like, in class, I'd be like, I thought it was good, I guess. Yeah, like, I'm trying to steer, trying not to be that guy as much as possible, because I don't want to lose that, that magic of being a fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, the more you do it, and also it helps you grow as well as an artist to like find those moments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think just like with everything, I think there's a balance. You gotta like take it with walk a tightrope as.
Yeah, it's true. And as an actor, I know you don't want to be too much in your head. You don't want to be watching yourself while you're acting. Where at the same time, you have to be aware of the conventions of the medium, if it's for camera or stage, but that's just a little bit of your brain. So I feel like it's different as an actor and as a director.
Do you plan on doing any more acting, or are you strictly going to direct and teach? Or?
Well, I have a solo show that I do sometimes, and my husband, who is an excellent playwright, wrote this for me because I said, hey, how come you're writing solo shows for everyone else and not for me? So he wrote one for me, and it's a lovely show, so I would like to start doing that in some festivals now that things are opening back up.
What's the show?
It's called Furrow. And it's a lovely piece. It's actually, there are 2 solo shows he wrote that are meant to be done together in a full-length evening. It's called
duality show?
Sure.
Would you call it?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I would. It's called People of the Book. And it's about 2 people who work in the same bookstore. And it's also kind of about... we're having some big conversations about immigration right now, and so they both happen to be about immigration, but it's very subtle, and that message kind of sneaks in. And they're lovely plays. They're sad, and they're funny, and my husband thinks people who work in bookstores are awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and they get all the discounts. They can read all the books, and
yeah,
that's another thing. Growing up, I didn't really care for reading, but now I'm finding myself more interested in doing that.
Oh, that's
especially
great.
With technology.
Yeah.
Gotta expand the brain.
Yeah. Now, do you think that your acting studies has added to that? Because as an actor, you learn to read a script so deeply.
Yeah, I think once I started diving more into acting. Reading plays, obviously, stuff like that, which expanded to reading other things, mostly on like financial literacy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But and then just like novels and stuff. But yeah, mostly plays still. But yeah, I am expanding it a little bit more into other genres when it comes to plays, or when it comes to books, I should say, because reading is fundamental still. But we're almost to that old doomsday graduation day.
Yeah.
In May. So what's the goals after? Have you thought about that?
I have, yeah, and I am going to start applying for teaching jobs because I really do love teaching. But the nice thing about it, if I get a teaching job at a university, it's sort of like your day job, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing is that during the summers, I'll still get paid and I could go off and do whatever projects I want. So I would love to, for instance, do a directing observership of those projects that they do, the public works projects in Central Park. And go and watch how they put the whole thing together for the few weeks before the entire show opens. I have these plays that I'm writing and that I would love to do. I have some... I'm talking with a production company about turning How We Got Here into a film. So I have all these projects that I really want to do, but I also want dental insurance. So, so I think that
dental is important.
Yeah, and so I think balancing teaching, which I love doing, with having the time to do these other projects as well, it just sounds great.
Yeah.
So the answer to teaching or directing is yes.
Both.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and.
Yeah. Yes, and.
Cool. So what motivates you now? What keeps you going down this path of the artistry and continuing to learn and grow and...
I just can't help it.
Yeah.
You know, I just can't help it. I mean, we all have paths not taken. You know, I think about what life would have been like if I were a pastry chef, for instance. That would have been good too.
Was that on the docket?
There was definitely a possibility
Yeah.
going to culinary school.
Yeah, I took a semester in high school for cooking.
Oh,
It was
cool.
mostly because I wanted to eat food.
Yeah,
Not
there you
because
go.
not because I wanted to be a chef.
Yeah.
Although I consider myself pretty decent in the kitchen.
Oh, really?
I think I'm more
That's
of a
great.
baker.
Me too.
But yeah, I wouldn't do
Yeah.
it for profession. I just want to eat the food.
Yeah, well, that's why I started learning to cook
Yeah.
too when I was a teenager, because then you get to eat.
Yeah, I do have a food review show. We'll see about that. It's still coming out.
Nice.
A little shameless plug there.
But you know, some people, like, I've always known since I was a kid that I wanted to be a theater artist, and I'm expanding into
Yeah.
film and video, but it's just the thing I've always done. It's how I see the world and
Yeah.
what I'm most interested in, and it's, you know, besides food, one of the few things in my life that has been constant, and it's always been there.
Yeah, and it's for me too. It's like been something that's always been something I saw as fun and something that I wasn't stressing about. And even when I wasn't doing the theater stuff, I found myself, you know, around my friends, you know, being a fool and doing funny stuff. And then also sports was a level of performing as well. So like I've been
Yeah.
performing technically since a child. So like from when I was a child, you know, imagining things, then going into sports, performing in front of people, and then
Yeah.
finally actually taking the leap to be an
Yeah.
actor and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been there all ever since. And
Yeah.
you know, once I like wanted to do it, and then once I got old enough and you know said, you know, I'm going to do it, then yeah. But yeah, it's because I don't see myself being a regular old, you know, office or any type of normal profession or whatever you want to call it. No disrespect to them, but you know that ain't for me.
Yeah.
I'm more of an entrepreneur and artist and stuff like that. But yeah. So any last words? Any words of wisdom, Karen? I appreciate you spending this time with me.
Well, thank you. I just I love art, and I think artists are really special. And like you started out by saying, we have a weird relationship with them. You know, people like don't want their kids to be artists, but they love their favorite actors, and they love listening to music on the radio.
Yeah.
So let's go art, and let's encourage more of it in the world.
Yes.
It's about the things that make life most special.
Yes. Also, too, I wanted to ask you, if someone who wanted to be a director or anything like that, would you have any advice for them? Or like, what would you say to someone if they came up to you and was like, hey, I'm trying to direct and teach and do all this stuff?
Yeah, I would say that asking me that question is a great start. And if you really want to be a director, go take classes, but also just pursue opportunities. Find shows you think are good and find out who directed them, and ask if you can observe them directing a show sometime.
Yeah.
You know, and learn all you can. Learn about acting, learn about design, and ask directors a lot of questions.
Cool. You heard it there, folks. Final question, Karen. When it's all said and done, take that as you will. What would you like your legacy to look like?
Oh gosh, I would like people to say about me that she did art that made the world a better place.
Hey, can't ask for anything more than that.
Yeah.
Well, Karen, I thank you. Oh, also, is there any way, like, can we follow you or anything? Is there anything we can
Oh, yeah, sure.
keep track of your journey?
Right. I'm on Instagram, although I can't remember what the heck my handle is. But my website is www.karensabo.com. Sabo is Sabo. And I'm on Facebook at Karen Sabo Director. And you can also email me through my website.
Okay, cool. And then we'll find that Instagram. We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
But yeah, we're friends. I'm pretty sure it's Karen Sabo. It's Karen Sabo something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Alrighty, Karen. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Do we shake now?
Oh, we can shake. Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for another episode of the Greensboro, North Carolina edition, second season of Art is Life. And you know how I do always, guys. Peace, love, and blessings.